The road to a championship is never paved smoothly. It's always paved with peaks and valleys.
This is a soap opera 365 days a year.
This is Factual America. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects.
Texas is football country. The whole in Texas stadium so God could watch his favorite team, the Cowboys.
America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, is the definitive story of the 1990s Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones, the oil wildcatter turned owner who brought the NFL kicking and screaming into the 21st century. Emmy-winning directors Chapman and Maclain Way join us to discuss their spaghetti western turned sports docuseries that lives up to the legend that is America's Team. Stay tuned. Chapman and Maclain Way, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you, Chapman?
We're doing great, and we're excited. We're about 6 days away from this new show coming out, and we just had a really cool premiere in LA with Jerry Jones himself and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin, and had a good time, and so we're excited right now.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Matthew. Excited to chat.
Yeah, no, well, I think the pleasure's mine. Just to remind everyone, if you haven't figured this out yet, from the intro, we will be talking about America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming on Netflix starting August 19th. Congratulations and great to have you on again. And you must feel like you've won the lottery.
Yeah, you know what? It was this was an interesting project for us. It came to us through Netflix, which is really the first time that that's ever happened. We've always really developed our own ideas, and we've worked with Netflix now for almost 11, 12 years. So we made our first documentary, The Battered Bastards of Baseball, independently, took it to Sundance, and Netflix was really just starting to acquire documentaries. And so we were there really at the beginning with them, and it's been a wonderful working relationship. But this was really the first time that they got access to a great story, and we were fortunate enough to be on their list of people that they reached out to. So we got that first call from our close executive, our friend Gabe Spitzer, and he kind of, laid it out for us, which is Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys, full access. This team won 3 Super Bowls in the early 90s. They were powered by Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin. And there's a lot of, fascinating Shakespearean drama between Jimmy Johnson, the head coach and owner, and Jerry Jones. And so for us, we kind of just, dove in and started reading some of the books that were written in that era, diving into some of the NFL films. They were partners on the series into their archives. And I think pretty quickly, between seeing the footage, reading about just these amazing characters that also included guys like Deion Sanders and Barry Switzer, the story started to come into form for us, and we jumped on it.
When I bought the team, I was Darth Vader.
Dallas fans aren't happy.
Last year, they were 1-15.
I said, Dad, I don't know anything about running a football team. And he looked me in the eye and he said, neither do I.
We were gambling my family's whole fortune, so I had to take risks. And it started with Jimmy Johnson.
Get part of this, bro. Asthma, Mike. Get over there on that other field and have some asthma.
Wow, that's incredible. I actually want to talk a little bit more about that access shortly, but maybe, I usually ask, we usually start off, but you've beat me to us. I usually ask the guest to give me a synopsis, but it's a good Netflix doc title, so you already know what it's all about. It's about the Dallas Cowboys and America's Team. But as you've already highlighted, and what you were, as you were reading the books and things, and for some of us are of an age we certainly lived through this. Maybe a few words, Chapman, a few words to describe those 90s teams and the owner. Just to give people, a lot of people have, I think, as you say in later episodes, a whole generation or two has grown up without the Cowboys ever actually making it to a Super Bowl, or let alone not to mention an NFC championship game. So what was so iconic about that time and those teams?
For sure. Well, it's pretty interesting. You got to kind of start in 1989 when this unknown entity, an oil man, a wildcatter named Jerry Jones, announced that he was going to buy the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, this iconic American sports institution that had won 2 Super Bowls in the 70s, went to 5 Super Bowls in the 70s. They'd had one coach in their whole tenure, Tom Landry, of 29 years. All of a sudden, in 1989, this unknown guy comes in, buys the team, and the first thing he does is he fires Tom Landry, just this beloved, iconic coach in Dallas. And he goes and he hires his college friend, Jimmy Johnson, who was the head coach at the University of Miami. He took this massive risk bringing Jimmy in, and he says it himself that he was Darth Vader. He comes into this new city, new town. It's a little bit like a Western. This mysterious guy kind of shows up. No one knows anything about him. And in their first year, they go 1-15, tied the record for the worst season record in NFL history. They take a whole bunch of crap, the whole world's against them. And they kind of roll up their sleeves and go to work. And they end up assembling this team of Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith. They put together, known as the Triplets, and put together this kind of iconic team that then turns around from 1-15 to winning 3 Super Bowls in the next 4 seasons. And it's a really kind of unique underdog story that you don't quite expect for the Cowboys. Cowboys and underdog usually don't go hand in hand. But once we kind of dove in and started going through a lot of the old 16 millimeter film and reading the old interviews, it gave us a much better sense of this very kind of epic and thrilling sports story that hadn't really been told in a definitive fashion.
And he made practice hell so the game is heaven. We were ready.
Showtime.
All of a sudden, it was a runaway train.
Oh, baby!
Everywhere we went, they were icons.
We played hard, and then we played hard.
And can I just say, I'll play because I am the old man in the room, I'll play this card. I'm from Texas originally. I live in the UK now, but I'm originally from Texas. I was a Cowboys fan before Jerry was on the scene, long before. Born and raised with the Cowboys. Can I say you got episode 1 spot on? Yeah, I mean, it is perfect. I have to say, you captured that era and the feeling, this idea that this hick from Arkansas was going to come in and take over our beloved Cowboys. And, we knew things weren't going great, obviously. Right. I remember sitting in a dorm room watching the Cowboys just get pummeled by the New York Giants in the late 80s. But, there's a certain mystique, a certain way you were supposed to do things, right? There was a certain class. Forget there's, there's, believe me, it wasn't all that they kind of made it out to be. I mean, the movie North Dallas 40s based on those Cowboys, right? So it wasn't all, just look up Hollywood Henderson. I think you've got a precursor to someone like Michael Irvin. I think you guys, you got it.
It was interesting because some of the first conversations that we had with Jerry, he emphasized how hated he felt and how hated he was by Dallas by firing Tom Landry. And you know what? I was not around for that time. And just having made documentaries before, and this is just my experience, but you talk to people and they can tend to sometimes over-exaggerate how much criticism they got. I remember getting all the archived local news footage back from WFAA, KTV, all these local stations. Right. And I don't think Jerry was exaggerating. He might have been underselling it even to me, which is it was hours.
Legitimate death.
It was hours of just the worst coverage of and he had a funny story that we didn't work into the documentary, but he eventually ends up hiring a PR crisis firm, some of the best and brightest people out of New York City. And apparently they ranked the Jerry Jones criticism and the firing of Tom Landry as their #1 biggest failure that they have ever had as a firm in terms of handling any public opinion whatsoever. And then it was just this all is I read Dallas gave a really sweet goodbye to Tom Landry. And I remember seeing that parade footage, which was pretty much a funeral procession for Tom Landry that Dallas threw for him, and just being absolutely blown away. But it was remarkable.
With that success, you also get disruption.
Police officers came to me.
And they pulled the gun. Open the door right now.
Jerry is that disruptor, that innovator.
You're not much of a gambler unless you're going against the popular trend.
No one ever thought Jerry had the guts to fire Jimmy.
You don't know half the stuff that was happening.
Right. I mean, 100,000 people, I think, come out. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. But, I mean, it's 30 years have passed, so I'm willing to start maybe letting bygones be bygones. But
that's big of you, Matthew. That's big of you.
Well, it's a new 30 years now. Now it's another 30 years before you won a Super Bowl.
But, I mean, I thought what was interesting is like all this stuff you picked up on him, like even this master's paper he wrote on sports, marketing and how to grow the business and everything. So that's another. I mean, it's 8 very enjoyable episodes. So let it speak for itself. But I think that's the other way to look at this too. And the way is you are looking at it. What was the NFL like before Jerry and after Jerry comes on the scene? It's we didn't realize it at the time because it was big. The NFL was huge, but it seems like a sleepy old boys club by comparison to what Jerry turned it into.
Yeah, in the 70s and 80s, the NFL was kind of a rich hobby of sorts for very wealthy people. And if it lost a little bit of money, no big deal. And they didn't care. Everyone wants to win, but it wasn't the end of the world. And seeing Jerry kind of come in with a different vision for how he saw the game business-wise, and also kind of one of the first owners to realize that it's entertainment. The NFL, football, it's a narrative, it's storytelling. We got to hook the fans. We got to get the fans to know the players. We got to market the players better. We got to build storylines. And, he says in the documentary, he calls the Dallas Cowboys a soap opera. And he just had this innate understanding of narrative and drama and conflict. And I think one of the first things that really impressed me about Jerry upon meeting him was that he's really a dreamer. He's kind of known in the press for this can have this overbearing personality, but we really kind of saw him more as like the Willy Wonka of the NFL. And when you actually spend a lot of time with him, there's a softness and a creativity to him that I think is different than most owners. And so I think it's a really fascinating character study into him. He talked about his college thesis that he was kind of dreaming this stuff up in his dorm room. I mean, decades before implementing it. It's pretty wild.
And Chap, you touched on it, but I didn't really know this either, which Jerry, I think, was, the first generation of owners to come in that needed his team to make money. Before that, it was legacy ownership where they would sell percentages of the team to multiple people to kind of mitigate the risk and the money loss, the losing money that these NFL teams did. And Jerry kind of leveraged everything he owned to buy this team. And he kind of came in with even Skip Bayless. He has a great quote with gusher luck because, he put $800,000 into this one well. It hits absolutely massively. He nets $100 million on it. He leverages all of his other assets. He buys the Cowboys for $150 million. He needs it to make money. But he was kind of coming into a league where he kind of started doing whatever he wanted. Right. He broke league consensus and signed Nike at the club level, which was radically different than how the NFL operated. The NFL operated with the idea of, hey, we're all going to do one deal together and we're going to split those proceeds. Jerry's opinion was dude, the Dallas Cowboys are bigger than anyone else in this league. I'm going to start doing my own deals. He kind of brings Fox into the NFL for the first time. So he kind of starts breaking with league consensus. And I do think that is a wild, wild west way of running an NFL team. The only thing that I think is really interesting is I think that the NFL, I don't know the NFL as very well, but as a casual fan, I think that it's a league that's become so much more scientific, so much more of hundreds of millions of dollars go into each and every department of these NFL teams. And Jerry is still by and large kind of running the Dallas Cowboys all by himself with his family. So it kind of begs the question of just has this wild, wild west decision-making really served the Dallas Cowboys over the last 30 years? I think it's hard to argue that they've had success in the type of success that they wanted, but it is a fascinating arc of Jerry's ownership that initially gave him tons of on-field success, and now he's trying to get back to the same spot.
Playing for the Cowboys is different.
the most valuable sports franchise in the world.
No matter what they say, they can't prepare you. You just got to experience it.
And the only thing else I got to say is, how about this, Cowboys?
We do it our way, baby.
I mean, I think what illustrates for me, and it's certainly the last few years, I mean, you can be in the middle of a pennant race in baseball, right? But if you get on ESPN, your app on your phone, what's the first thing that comes up? It's all about the camps, the preseason, NFL.
100%.
You know,
it's incredible. Making this documentary, this is an experience I've had in my life, but you know, there was a moment where the NFL was kind of going through controversies, concussions, CTE stuff, and I was like, man, maybe the NFL is getting like a little wobbly. And I've never been more wrong about anything in my entire life. Year after year, the viewership, the profitability, like the NFL is the only unicorn in the entire television business that draws massive ratings. And it's propping everything else up. And it's like, that is so, and to me, that's why a story like the 90s Dallas Cowboys is actually important to know about. And I didn't really know too much about them before I started this, but you can draw a straight line from the NFL and its power and its influence and players becoming celebrities and the biggest icons in the sport directly to the 90s Cowboys and what Jerry did with Emmett, Michael, Troy. I mean, those guys were so famous. So it's just fascinating to see how Jerry did put the NFL on the path that it's on today.
Okay. And speaking of Jerry, so you've already said Netflix came to you guys and you won the lottery and you got to do this project. But how did this get made? Because others have tried and failed, right? I'm aware of that. I know of people who've actually reached out and were told, well, Jerry will never play ball. You got to get NFL Films involved and he won't let that happen. And is that true? And what changed that he was willing to put himself out there on the line or is it he is Jerry, so he sees an opportunity, right, to further raise the profile of the Cowboys?
Yeah, you know, it's a good question. It's actually something I've never really asked Jerry. I'm just like, it's occurring to me now, and I would love to ask him, like, hey, why this one? Or why did this one? Because you're right. I do know that this has kind of been referred to as a white whale in sports documentary filmmaking, 90s Cowboys. I've always just kind of chalked it up to a bit of the fact that Jerry and Jimmy just had a 30-year icy relationship. I mean, yes, they could attend events and talk and have fun with one another, but they knew that a retrospective that looked back at the 90s Cowboys, which is certainly what our documentary did, could open up old disagreements, you know, and that's certainly a big part of our story. Even to this day, if you got Jerry and Jimmy in the same room and you ask them who's responsible for the Herschel Walker trade, you're going to get two very different answers. And that's okay. I'm not criticizing neither Jerry or Jimmy for that. There's things that Chap and my brother, continue to disagree about, but we still have a relationship and we work together, and that's fine. So I always kind of chalked it up to that, which is that, you know, to tell this story, I think any documentary filmmaker worth their salt would want both Jerry and Jimmy in this story.
Right.
And I think that there's been versions of it told without both of them. But having both of them was really, it was not rocket science for us to realize how special a story it is. These two guys that have known each other since 17, went to college together, went 1-15 in their first year, win back-to-back Super Bowls, and then Jerry fires Jimmy. And they don't really have a relationship for 30 years. And there is some reconciliation in the documentary, which we're happy about as well. But to me, that was always kind of the reason why it was hard to pull this together.
And I think you mentioned this access they're giving you, Chapman. I mean, what did they give you? There's never before seen footage, is that right? And is that like the draft day war room type stuff or the Deion Sanders negotiations? Are these the kind of things that we've not seen before?
Everything. It was so much. And when we first talking Netflix, we've done 4 volumes of Untold, which is a sports anthology series. And so they called us up, and I was like, man, another sports documentary? I don't know. Like, I was a little burned out on sports, and Gabe, our executive, was like, just look at the archive footage, and so I was like, all right, and we check it out, and it's just thousands and thousands of hours of pristine 16 millimeter footage, and all of it had been transferred. A lot of it had never been seen before, and this footage is shot by these incredible cinematographers in the 80s and 90s. And I mean, these guys are are filming on like a wide lens, and then they're like crash zoom into a spiral, 30 yards in the air, and it's like slow motion. They, whip pan over, and it's just like it's like watching a nature documentary almost. When I was watching this, I was like, this is some of the best archive footage I've seen. Like, these guys are true artists that were making this.
Is that
footage.
NFL Films you're talking about?
This is NFL Films, yeah. The guys that filmed everything. And it was just like stunning. So obviously we kind of, I don't know, specialize, but a lot of our work is kind of centers around archive footage. And this was some of like the most uniquely shot and immersive archive footage I'd seen. And so after, like, I think we got access to like an Avid system that like was routing us to the NFL Films headquarters. And I was just going to poke around for like 10 minutes. And I ended up probably watching about 5 hours straight of archive footage. And we were immediately like, wow, this is a very special collection, and we can definitely do something pretty cool with this. So the access to the footage was number one. And then I think number two was just the access that Jerry gave us to the Cowboys, the team, the stadium, his family, their own personal archives. Meeting Jerry was really a trip because he's one of the few documentary subjects we've ever had that understands that a good story needs drama and conflict, and it needs salt and sugar, and a lot of times it's us explaining that to subjects, and Jerry was trying to pitch us on that, and we're like, all right, well,
yeah, he was like, you should talk to this guy, he's roasted me for like 30 years in the media. Like, I was like, great. Like local guys that he's like, oh, that guy has never agreed with a single thing I've done. Like, he'd be and he meant it. He wasn't even saying it with like a smile. He's like, no, it would be like a very interesting perspective in the documentary to go talk to someone who just has disagreed with almost every decision I've made since I bought the team. And he was supportive of that.
Well, I guess that gets to, because one question I had is even someone I was talking to who's had the joy of seeing this as well. Do you ever, any worries about Jerry as an unreliable narrator? I mean, he's a bit, he himself says his mouth was good at borrowing loads of money that he couldn't afford to pay back, and master of keeping the Cowboys in the spotlight. And you already mentioned how he kept referring to this soap opera that, 24/7 basically. Do you have to be mindful of that of interviewing? Or I guess you've got so much access to, as you say, people who have been running him down for 30 years. You can tell the story without having to worry about that.
Yeah, I just feel I feel like he's a larger than life personality. He's got a flair and a knack for storytelling and interviewing, and I think that comes across. And I think he's got a P.T. Barnum-esque personality, and I think he knows how to put butts in seats and sell tickets, and that's something that he's very, very good at. And I think that charm in the way that he tells stories is part of what makes the show special. And so, yes, we're always trying to get multiple POVs and hear from other people. I never felt like Jerry was flat out lying to us, but if, it's the old saying, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And for us, like, all this is built on myth. It's all myth making to some degree. The Cowboys, America's team, all of it is kind of part of this American folklore in a way. I think that's why we kind of want, with the Western aesthetic, we kind of embrace this whole thing of mythology and folk tales and all that stuff. So yeah, it was something that we didn't shy away from. I think we embraced it.
Yeah, the other thing that occurs to me with that question too is like, Chap, I don't know if you agree, but it's like, Jerry also told some pretty unflattering stories himself, and he told them well. He really was like, there's a story that he told early on where he's like, and it's after his press conference with Jimmy Johnson, and it's Jimmy announcing that he is no longer going to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And Jerry drives himself home, and he comes home, and it's late at night. It's like 10, 11 at night. And he's like, I go into my bedroom, and my wife, Jean, is in bed, and she's just staring up at the ceiling, and she doesn't even look at me. And I get into bed, and she still has her eyes on the ceiling, and she says, you just can't help yourself, can you? We've won back-to-back Super Bowls. We came from putting all of our money in this team. We finally are at the top here, and you go out there and you fire the head coach, the guy that we've done this with. You just can't help it. And it's fun. And Jerry is starting to well up as he tells the story, and he ends the story with, now I usually tell this story laughing and poking a little fun here. I don't know why right now I'm getting so sensitive about it. But that's a story where if you look at it at the core, it's like this guy's telling you that his wife basically just yanked his heart out at like a very tough, difficult moment. And he's willing to share this story with tears in his eyes for everyone. And that wasn't necessarily a story that's like, oh, let's put that in there so you feel bad for Jerry.
Right.
I think it was a moment where Jerry was looking in the mirror for the first time. And maybe for the first time, he was starting to second guess, like, who's looking back at me right now? And who made this decision to fire Jimmy Johnson? That's how I always kind of interpreted a story like that.
Hey, I want to get right back to it, but we're going to give our listeners and viewers a quick break. So we'll be right back with Chapman and Maclain Way, the co-directors of America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming on Netflix starting August 19th. And while you're at it, why not subscribe or follow us? Please turn on your notifications to make sure you never miss one of our episodes. Factual America is brought to you by Alamo Pictures, a London-based production company specializing in feature documentaries, factual television, and shorts about the U.S. Benefiting from an outsider's keen eye and years of stateside experience, Alamo's filmmakers explore topical, uniquely American stories from a sympathetic European perspective. The result is engaging cinema and television that defies stereotypes and helps audiences truly understand what makes America tick. Check out Alamo's website at alamopictures.co.uk to be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing Alamo's films, and to connect with the team. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Chapman and Maclain Way, the Emmy-winning co-directors of America's Team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming on Netflix. We were just talking about Jerry really opening himself up in this one instance, and you've got this dream cast, right? I mean, this is amazing. You know, Jerry
Absolutely.
Jones, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer, Michael Irvin, Emmett Smith, Troy Aikman, and that I actually made a note of that exact scene that you mentioned. I said I did. My friend was the one that raised it with me, but did they go in place? I mean, you know. Did they surprise you with their openness? All of them. I mean, did you go places you weren't expecting?
Definitely. I mean, I think especially with professional athletes. I mean, they're so media trained, especially during that era. They're buttoned up. You know, it's usually they speak in platitudes and cliches about winning and losing. And so, whenever you deal with professional athletes, you're always a little nervous or hoping that they'll open up and talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, their frailties, some of their flaws. And it's usually a talk we have to give to our subjects. And again, I think we were just kind of stunned when you sit down with someone like Michael Irvin, who just was, one of 17 children. He was, the 15th out of 17th, and came from a difficult childhood, kind of worked his way up, became a star at Miami, and then got drafted by the Cowboys. And when you listen to his life story of what he's been through, everything he overcame, and then at the end of his career, a lot of the difficulties that he found himself in with drugs and a lot of legal issues and a little bit of his downfall. And he was so open and honest and raw without us really even having to prod him too much. And so I really say, sometimes when you get great interviews, people are like, what's your technique? What'd you do? But sometimes you just get lucky. With Michael Irvin, it was hit record and get out of the way, let him talk, right. So sometimes you got to learn when to shut up, And so I think with a great with a great subject like that was really more the case, really.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that one line he talks about what his wife said to him after they, and my 15-year-old was watching it with me, and he was just like, whoa. Yeah. That's wow. And that wasn't the only one. There was a couple other lines he had that were just, very profound.
You know what was a remarkable experience that I'm thinking about it is, Chap and I have made sports documentaries before. We've also made non-sports documentaries, but this is the first football documentary we've ever really directed. And I think that the thing that makes a football documentary stand apart is there's really no other sport where teammates have to make the most brutal physical sacrifices for the success of other teammates on the team. Like in baseball, yeah, you can put a bunt down and move a runner over, or in basketball, you have to set a hard screen. But these players have to go out on Sundays and borderline physically destroy their bodies for their team to win Super Bowls. And that's what they did. And so for us, it was almost like when we would tap into that emotion, that's when these guys would get so open and so vulnerable, and they would often cry and they would express gratitude for teammates, that it wasn't the losses that made them hurt. It was them expressing gratitude for these guys and these bonds that they have built and how strong they are. And I always found that so beautiful, but that was across the board with these guys. It's like, and I didn't quite expect that starting this documentary, but I realized that they all appreciate one another so much for their, joint success that they've had.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't usually say this even about Troy Aikman, but he wears his heart on his sleeve, in these scenes, and the feelings are still so raw and real, to this day, and 30 years later, it was quite incredible.
Yeah, it was really interesting
100%,
interviewing Troy, because I think every documentary I've ever made, there's certain characters where during the interview you're not sure if you're getting what you need. But then as soon as you start playing the interview back, a couple weeks later, and it's been transcoded, and you see the quiet intensity and how much he was revealing in his own way, he's not as boisterous and loud as the other characters, but he's got his own way of communicating. And it was one of those characters, as soon as you start to edit with music and you start to shape his story, you're just like, man, this guy is super intense and really profound in his own way. That's always a dream as a filmmaker, where you're just like, man, I was so kind of wrong about this. In the moment, I was maybe a little nervous, but now looking back at it, he just gave us a terrific interview.
I mean, the characters were wild because we had that. And then I think literally the next morning after we did one session with Troy, we had Deion Sanders come in. And it's we didn't even ask him to wear a cowboy hat. He just rocked his own cowboy hat out of Boulder, Colorado, and just matched the whole set deck that we had done. Yeah. And then we interviewed Deion fast, fast for us, which is we spent hours and hours. We have 30, 40 hours of interviews with Jerry. Right. With Deion, obviously tight schedule, but he was amazing. We had 3 hours, but it was the fastest, one of the best interviews I've ever done with Deion. So much fun interviewing that guy.
And so because we're actually, I think we're coming close to the end of our time together. I hate to say, but what is the challenge? I mean, besides the obvious challenge with all the wealth of archive and the storytelling, but is there a challenge in making a doc that lives up to the mystique, especially this team? You can't go short with the budget, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is hard. I think on the most basic level is the wins and losses and the tension of that doesn't mean anything if you don't feel like you actually know the human beings that are at the center of it, So I think step one is you're just okay, at its most basic level, how do we capture the humanity of the story and the humans at the center of it? And then two, I think aesthetically it was let's I don't know if there's ever been a spaghetti Western sports documentary, and this is the Cowboys, and it just feels perfect. And I was we should use really big, massive, old Hollywood Western backdrops. And so, we went to some of the old film studios in Burbank and Glendale, and they still had them rolled up, and we rented a few that had been in some famous Westerns. And, we drove them, we had to drive them. We couldn't even fly them. We had to drive them from LA out to Dallas where we did the interviews. And we kind of built a whole Western studio stage for all the different characters. And I think what it really did is it really helped put the characters kind of in the moment and understand a little of the magnitude of the project. I think it helped them buy in. I think it helped them take it seriously, and they realized this is something a little bit different, a little bit unique, and they came and they played ball.
I think that set is absolutely epic. I was going to ask you about that. Who came up with that idea? It doesn't matter who came up with that. The idea that you came up with.
It was Chap.
I'll take the credit.
Yeah, it was. No, I remember Chap. You sending me these deep archive.org links from the Warner Brothers rental backlot, and I was wow, these things still exist. And then we actually had to commission a few originals. We found a great backdrop painter who used to do this, and it was just kind of amazing the whole process. But I mean, just to add on to Chap's point, that was also something we had a rush at a certain point, to get these interviews in the can. And I think one of the things that I just didn't really think to do was to tell our guys, hey, real quick, you're going to be walking onto a set deck stage. Here's what we're doing. And so they all showed up, and I think Chap's right. They immediately, I might be projecting here. I think they got a little nervous at first, most of them, which is like gulp, like, whoa, there's a lot of, but they're all unbelievably famous guys and they've been around cameras for years. But I think there was a unique element to like, okay, this is not just a sit down interview in my kitchen. Like, this is a little bit different, but I think it brought a little bit of a better performance out of it, or at least I'd like to think so.
And yes, I agree. I don't know if I've ever seen a spaghetti Western sports doc, but I think it was brilliant. And if I may say, how much effort went into doing those first 6 minutes? Because that intro is incredible. It just pulls you in and you're hooked. And of course, it helps to have Ennio Morricone's score playing underneath it, right?
Exactly.
But
like, an epic song from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Yeah, and the
Ecstasy of Gold.
Ecstasy of Gold, which is really, and that was kind of from the very beginning. It was like we edited it in the offline, and was also kind of one of those cues that we were always at some point like maybe we'll replace with the original score. But then we kind of got to the end of the process and we're like, we should just license it. It works so well. It helps set the stage and the tone and the mood. And yeah, we like basically had to condense, season after season, a season of highlights and capture the highs, the lows, the drama, some of the best archival moments, intercut with some modern day footage. And so it was like a real task, but it was something that was important for us to land. And so I think we definitely probably spent more time on the first 6 minutes than some full episodes.
The other thing that's interesting is because, we've based our entire career has been at Netflix, and you can learn the hard way that, some projects, that we've done can have a pretty bad drop off rate early, just because that's just the nature of what, like, you're not buying a movie ticket and sitting in a movie theater.
Most of my podcast episodes, but yeah, go ahead.
So it's just the reality of the media landscape that you're in. It's like, okay, like we kind of need to throw some big punches early on just so that when you are decided to click on this documentary series on your couch at home, it actually hopefully grabs you and you stick with it is always the goal, But so there actually was a little bit of our own risk in starting with Jerry's oil story because there's kind of a concept with like, hey, it's a football series. It's a 90s football series. And you really don't see a football until like 2-3 minutes in, which I'm sure for a broad audience, it's like, well, what's the big risk in that? But when you, like I said, like it actually is kind of a big risk is making a football series and not showing a football play in the first 2 or 3 minutes. But for us, it was important to start with Jerry's just origin story, and how he got the money, a condensed version of it, but how he got enough money to buy the Dallas Cowboys because he really is the inciting incident in the entire story. And hopefully you're off to the races at that point.
Yeah. And as you say, I mean, that was like his last gasp pretty much, that oil well. I mean, he doesn't hit a gusher there. I mean, we're never hearing about Jerry Jones, most
100%.
likely,
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet here we are. I mean, August of 2025, and you're going to get. I mean, you talk about getting interest and not having a drop off rate, but my goodness, I mean, we're just within the last 24 hours, we got Denzel Washington going viral because he goes off on Jerry Jones. I mean, this is just the story that's going to keep on giving. I would imagine.
Yeah, I had mentioned how I thought maybe Jerry was, overselling how much media criticism he got for Tom Landry. I think in a similar vein, like even I'm learning that I might underestimate how much inherent interest there is in the Dallas Cowboys. And I know that's like shocking to say as the director of a project that's worked on a Dallas Cowboys series for 2 years, but until you a little bit experience it yourself, it's just so mind-blowing how this team it's like plug and play. The sports media landscape is in some ways built around the Dallas Cowboys. They're the first A block on all these talk shows, on all these sports shows. So it's going to be wild. It's going to be interesting. We're obviously very excited to get it out there though and have people watch it.
Well done. And I won't even ask. I think you've already touched on it, and the doc even covers it. Why haven't the Cowboys won a Super Bowl in 30 years? And I mean, the thing that strikes me as well is that here's this guy who's the ultimate disruptor, right? And he creates the NFL that we know today. But are the Cowboys now at the risk of being old establishment, right? Because he's handing over the team to his family like many U.S. pro franchises used to do in the past. The New York Giants, the Lakers, obviously, Indianapolis Colts did something. It does feel like
definitely. I think there's
history
a lot of like
repeats
great
itself.
tension there, which is like Jerry's one of the only owner / general manager who's the owner, but also in charge of football operations and football decisions. And, from his point of view, he feels like he's got one more fastball left in him, and I think everyone else feels like maybe he doesn't, and so I think our series kind of ends on this little bit of upswing, which is they fired their coach, they brought in a new coach, they signed CeeDee Lamb to a massive contract, Dak Prescott's the highest paid player in the league. Like, from Jerry's point of view, he's going all out here to try to win one more in this next year or so. So it'll be really fascinating to see what happens with the team.
Yeah. Well, I agree. We'll see how it plays out. Given his story, I wouldn't bet against him necessarily. Somehow he's going to orchestrate just some incredible ending to all this.
They'll be talked about one way or another. I know that.
Yeah, exactly. I think we do got to let you go here now. But just before I do, just wanted to say I loved your film Battered Bastards of Baseball. I saw it a couple years ago and was at my brother's house, and we were looking for something to watch and didn't even know what it was about and loved it.
That's awesome. Yeah, we went from a short season single A baseball team to the most valuable sports franchise in the world.
That's right. We're climbing up our own ladder right
what
now.
What lessons can we all learn from that?
Right, exactly.
Strike oil. Get lucky. Strike oil.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, just want to say another big thanks to you, Chapman and Maclain Way, the co-directors of America's team, The Gambler and His Cowboys, streaming on Netflix starting August 19th. Do definitely check it out. People will be talking about it. They'll be comparing it to The Last Dance, I'm sure. Yeah, and while you're doing that, remember to like the episode and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts or subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember to ring the bell to be notified of future episodes. Chapman and Maclain, thank you so much. Thanks for making this film, and really it was a joy having you on.
Awesome chat, Matthew. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Factual America. Please subscribe and like us and share us with friends and family. Find us on YouTube, social media, and factualamerica.com. This is Matthew Sherwood, signing off.